Now, last week, a fabulous rejig of New Zealand's national assessment system was announced by the Prime Minister, but especially by the Education Minister, Erica Stanford, who has distinguished herself in her curriculum over the last 2 years, it has to be said, and is now being openly talked about as the successor to Christopher Luxon, should it get any more pear-shaped for the national leader than it is at the moment. There has been an extraordinary number of changes that have happened under her watch, from the banning of cell phones in schools, which has generally been accepted as being a positive thing, to the rewriting of the curriculum to a more critical, or should we say, fact-based curriculum, not one based so much on critical theory, to obviously the assessment regime, which has been a trouble for a long time. But this is the first education minister, after a large number of them who all knew it was in trouble and did nothing, who's actually prepared to do so. But there are her critics who say she has not gone far enough, fast enough, and needs to do more. And one of those is our next guest, educational consultant and commentator, Alwyn Poole, and he joins us now. Alwyn, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you on.
Thanks, Michael. Good morning to you.
I think that's right, isn't it? That you say, in actual fact, far from being, the best education minister we've had in 20 years, you think that there are some fatal flaws in her decision-making around the education portfolio. Could you take me through some of the areas in which you think that perhaps her reputation is not as justified as it might be?
Well, I'd say the good things first. I mean, we've needed an education minister who is at least positive and out there, and that certainly wasn't the case for the 6 years under Labour. I think Kiki Parata tried, and she did some things that were effective, but she was pretty confrontational. And I think the ministry under her didn't function particularly well, and strong evidence of that with what happened with the Christchurch schools, where they were pretty much forced into these situations for the new style of schools and things like that. So the fact that we have got a Minister of Education who is positive and putting herself out there and attempting to be inspirational, I think is a very good thing. And she has identified some of the things that need to change and need to improve. I guess my take would be that at present, and I don't think it's just in education, I think this government will become known as the government who has done the least for the people who need it the most. And I think that's a part of the reason why they are kind of, not positively viewed by a really significant number. 70% of the population say they wouldn't vote for National at this point. It's significant.
But it's nothing to do with education, though. It's to do with the economy,
that's a part
surely.
of the package. Yeah, well, yes, of course.
It's a minor part of the package. I mean, it doesn't rate as one of the top 3 or 4 issues on which people make their votes, Alwyn.
No, I agree with that. But as I say, the least for people who need it the most. So I guess the way that I try and look at education is to take the view that the reason we have a state-funded education system is to provide positive outcomes for all students. And at the moment, it's known that we are the most fractured in the OECD. I think that has something to do with
what do you mean the most fractured?
The biggest gaps between those who do well and those who do poorly.
Oh, you mean in our education assessment?
In our education system, yep, yeah. And in our qualification system.
Yeah.
And so...
But can I ask the question there, though? Is that a reflection of our education system? That might be. Or is that a reflection in society? So if I am the parent of a child and I value education and schooling, it doesn't seem to matter whether or not I was living in a decile 1 or in a decile 10 home. I'm assuming my kids would end up okay. What's changed over the last oh, I don't know, 30 years to make that gap so large, do you think, Alwyn?
I think it is our social situation. People tend to look back and go, well, we had the good old days of our education system. And you and I went to a school where I don't think there was a good old days. But what was aligned, let's say, 60s, 70s, into the early part of the 1980s, was that the family values and the school values were quite closely aligned. And so you're right. You'd call it a decile one school, but I went pretty much every day, whether I wanted to or not.
Okay, so there was a social cohesion in our country. I
That's
understand
correct.
that. But
Yep.
but what I'm trying to work out is in this century, not back in the 1960s
Yes.
and 70s, but
Yep.
in this century, why is the gap between those who achieve in our schools and those who not, do you think, got disproportionately large?
Because, in my view, our parenting for particularly our 0s to 5, is not of high quality for a really large portion of our country. And so you have children who are uh, conceived, and the mother continues to drink alcohol, to smoke, to take pee. I mean, those are the extremes, but it occurs, and it occurs in actually significant numbers. You have children brought up in homes where good parenting hasn't been modeled, and I haven't met a parent who doesn't want their child to do well, but I've met many who don't know what to do to allow that to happen. Tremendous
Is
amount of
that, but is that Erica Stanford's fault? I mean, if
no,
she's
it's no,
got
it's
to,
not.
no,
No, it's not
no.
her
So,
fault.
well, so I guess what I'm saying is, you
Yep.
can only do what you can do. She's been in the portfolio for less than 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
She's trying to arrest some of the gaps that you're talking about. Structured literacy is a good example of that.
Yep.
Bringing in testing to make sure that you can monitor a kid's achievement twice a
Yep.
year. Those would seem, surely, although they might be old-fashioned, they would seem to at least treat each child individually and aware of the kids that are not succeeding and who need extra work. That's a good thing, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's not a bad thing at all. Although structured literacy isn't the kind of panacea that the advocates for it would like to think. There are plenty of kids who were succeeding under the old thing, and the biggest data point for children learning to read, once they get to school. There's a lot that can happen before they get to school, but is them actually attending school. So we know that we've got a massive attendance crisis. 50% of Māori children, for instance, are attending school fully. Well, it doesn't matter whether they're being taught with structured literacy, tested, all of those kinds of things, if they're not actually at school. Now, what the government, and it's not just this government, but any government does, is they tend to say, well, we've spent $140 million on improving attendance. And you think, wow, goodness, that's a lot of money. I could do with that. But when you break that down, it's less than 1% of the government's education spend. And so, to me, I think we need to roll back a little bit and look at what are the key problems. You're right, Erica Stanford is not responsible for the lack of social cohesion that has taken place in the last, let's say, 35 years. But as a society, we have to address it. And whether it's through an education portfolio, whether it's through creating, I believe that we should have a information-based, not intervention-based, Crown entity for parenting, because a lot of our children growing up, becoming mums or dads, they've never seen good parenting.
No,
They
I
don't know
understand
what.
that, and I don't disagree with you, and that's something we've
Yep.
talked about before. But I don't again see that as Erica Stanford's role. I'm trying to concentrate specifically on
Sure.
her almost two
Well,
years in the
I think
education portfolio.
she has to have some influence on that, because that is her key problem. Children are coming to school underprepared. Children are not attending school enough to close the gaps. Those are, to me, the two biggest issues. If we look at the qualifications thing, though, and where that's going and what's going to happen, I mean, she acknowledged the other day, at first, the qualifications outcomes are likely to go down. Now, at the moment, we have 16% of our children, after over 13,000 hours of taxpayer-funded schooling, 16% of our children leaving with nothing. 28%
Yeah.
of Māori students leaving with
Yeah, but
nothing.
those that do leave with something, it's largely unintelligible. And many of them are leaving with a qualification, NCA, say level 1, level 2, that are barely literate or numerate because they've been gaming and being gamed by the NCA assessment system. I mean, that's why we're changing it, aren't we?
Yep, and I don't think there's necessarily bad things in the way that we're changing it. I think there's lots of good. But without a package to really quickly bring up those students, then imagine this. So at the moment, because of the co-requisites, which again aren't a bad thing, but they were introduced when schools and teachers were poorly prepared, more children are leaving school without any qualification whatsoever, because without passing those literacy and numeracy co-requisites, they can't get level 1 NCEA. Okay? So if you're going to put a qualification system in place, you have to support the students who need it the most to get the qualification. So this new qualification system, where there's no level 1, there's a certificate which sounds pretty vague at the moment, and I think most schools will end up being put in the position where they feel that they need to have their own level 1 certificate or year 11 certificate. But then if you are going to get the first level, you have to get 4 out of 5 subjects at year 12.
Okay, it seems to me that that there are two separate issues here, if you don't mind me advancing them, Alwyn. The first question is the tail. Okay, so if you like, the tail of achievement, which is quite long, longer than it should be, and longer you're saying that it needs to be. So those students who aren't succeeding now, getting an inferior qualification, they can't even get that, we need to be addressing that. Yep, fair enough.
Absolutely. Yep.
Then there's the second issue, which is those that are succeeding, which is roughly 4 out of 5, maybe a bit more than that, 5 out of 6 of New Zealanders who do get, or kids do get that qualification, and whether or not that qualification is sufficiently robust and credible to be able to demonstrate to the wider world the knowledge that that particular child has, and how it can be used, obviously, in the workplace or at further tertiary studies. Now, she's addressing, it would appear to me, the latter, and it's going to take time. I mean, I don't think this new assessment regime comes in until another 3 or 4 years yet. I mean, it's quite a way away. And we might have a change of government there, and God knows we might go straight back to, well, we probably won't. But the tail that you talk about, that would seem to be a long-term piece of work, wouldn't it? Because at the moment, all the social policies of not the last 20, but the last 40 years have failed to arrest that tail, haven't they?